Good morning. We are looking at a rapidly shifting landscape across the region and the country today. And, well, it is our job to help you navigate it with a clear head.
Exactly. Good morning to you as well.
This deep dive is brought to you by ProWave AI and generated by Stylo News, which is the AI-powered news application. So, welcome to the Stylo News Intel Update, Asia Situation Report for 27 July 2026.
It's great to be here with you today. We are examining a really complex board this morning, and we are going to be relying heavily on some very specific intelligence to do it.
Right, and before we get into the actual analysis, you should probably know how this deep dive is actually put together. The intelligence we are unpacking for you today comes directly from the Stylo News application.
Which is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Stylo News is basically the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software. And for context, that is a platform traditionally reserved strictly for enterprise operations.
Right. We are talking about government intelligence agencies, the military, and multinational corporate boards.
Exactly. So you, as a listener, have unique access to a tool designed to support global decision makers. You're getting the same level of insight.
And our mission today is to analyze the strategic situation, the conflict zones, and the major flashpoints across 4 critical regions. We're looking at China, North Korea, South Asia, and Southeast Asia.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But we are looking at the facts on the ground, the perspectives of the key decision makers involved, and the most likely courses of action based on the data.
Right, and a quick tone check right here at the top. We are dealing with volatile geopolitical situations, but our objective today is absolute neutrality.
Precisely.
We're here to deliver verified facts, impartial intelligence estimates, and proposed courses of action so that you know exactly what to watch for. We do not generate fear, and we absolutely do not take political sides. We just read the board as it is.
Which brings us to the largest piece on that board today, and that is China.
Yeah, let's start there, because China's strategic posture essentially sets the baseline for all stability or, instability in East Asia.
It really does.
And the massive question, the one that drives global markets, dictates defense budgets, and keeps policymakers up at night, is whether China is preparing for an immediate full-scale attack on Taiwan.
Well, the intelligence assessment on that is no, and that is stated with medium confidence.
Okay.
When you look at the raw data from the last few months, the physical indicators of an imminent invasion they aren't there.
What kind of indicators are we talking about?
An amphibious assault of that scale requires massive, highly visible logistical movements, and we are not seeing large-scale amphibious loading at the ports. We are not seeing broad reserve mobilizations.
Right.
And perhaps most tellingly, there is no emergency stockpiling of blood supplies along the coast.
All right.
That is a primary, undeniable indicator that a military is anticipating immediate casualties.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. In fact, People's Liberation Army fighter sorties near Taiwan actually hit a 3-year low in the first half of 2026.
Wait, really? A 3-year low in fighter sorties?
That's what the data shows, yes.
That feels completely counterintuitive, the level of tension we see in the headlines every single day. If they aren't preparing to breach the beaches, what is the actual mechanism of their strategy right now?
It is a textbook execution of gray zone warfare.
Okay, unpack that for us.
The strategy isn't about an immediate kinetic strike. It's about persistent pressure and blockade rehearsals. China is actively preparing the battle space, gradually normalizing a higher level of military presence.
So that if they ever do decide to use coercive options, the infrastructure is already in place.
Exactly. We are tracking live fire drills near Okinotorishima and throughout the Taiwan Strait. We also just observed the first reported PLA helicopter crossing of the Taiwan Strait median line.
So it's an incremental push. I always think of gray zone tactics like a rival sports team deciding to hold their daily full-contact practices on your home field.
That's a great way to look at it.
They aren't officially blowing the whistle to start an actual game against you, so you can't retaliate without looking like the aggressor. But by being on your field every single day, they force you to keep your guards up constantly.
Right. They are normalizing their presence.
Yeah, they are testing your security perimeters, and they are economically and physically exhausting your defenses, all without technically breaking the rules of engagement.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. It is an exhaustion strategy as much as a military one. And, you have to view this gray zone pressure against the backdrop of rapid technological shifts.
Which are happening everywhere.
Exactly. Japan, for instance, is currently investing heavily in unmanned military drones. This is a deliberate move to better align their defense postures with the United States.
And I'm guessing Beijing is not happy about that.
Unsurprisingly, China is pushing back hard. The PLA Daily just issued a full-page warning, arguing that Japan's drone expansion violates its post-World War II pacifist constitution.
Which really highlights how technology is becoming the new proxy for military posturing. And that bleeds right into the economic side.
It absolutely does.
I mean, we have ongoing U.S.-China trade talks right now trying to stabilize the relationship, focusing on tariff reductions and how to manage China's dominance in global shipbuilding. Yet, despite heavy U.S. sanctions aimed at curbing their tech sector, Chinese technology is still surging.
It's surging rapidly. Huawei's chip revenue grew by 60% recently.
60%, that's massive.
And the domestic demand driving that growth is just staggering. Consider the artificial intelligence sector. A Chinese AI firm called Moonshot AI recently had to completely halt signups for its new Kimi K3 model.
Wait, they stopped taking new users?
Yeah, and it wasn't because of a lack of interest, but because their infrastructure simply could not handle the sheer volume of users trying to access it.
Okay.
It just goes to show that the technological arms race is running parallel to and is just as fierce as the military posturing.
So if we aren't looking for an amphibious assault fleet, what does the escalation actually look like? Are we just going to see more helicopters crossing median lines, or will it shift into cyber tests targeting critical infrastructure to, test international resolve?
Honestly, both. The most likely course of action is continued, masked drills that look like routine exercises but serve as blockade rehearsals, and you will absolutely see cyber tests.
Right.
The goal for decision makers there is to see exactly how far they can push the envelope without triggering a conventional shooting war.
Well, let's shift gears from China's highly calculated long-term pressure campaign to a neighbor playing a much more unpredictable game. Let's look at North Korea.
Yes, the dynamic there is shifting rapidly.
And the intelligence here is fascinating because Pyongyang's recent actions are actually causing significant friction with Beijing. But let's tackle the baseline threat first. Is North Korea positioning for a deliberate attack on South Korea?
Again, the near-term assessment is that it is highly unlikely.
Okay.
The classic pre-attack indicators are absent. We are not seeing massive forward deployments of heavy artillery. There is no unusual sustained air activity. And there are no civilian evacuation measures being broadcast to the population in Pyongyang.
But they are doing something. I mean, the reports indicate a lot of internal and border activity.
There is a tremendous amount of activity, but it's focused on internal consolidation and border fortification. Independent reporting suggests Kim Jong-un is actively purging military insiders.
Purging his own generals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when a regime like that purges its own command structure, it generally points to paranoia, a perceived lack of trust within the ranks, or a need to eliminate dissenting voices before a major strategic shift.
That makes sense.
Simultaneously, along the demilitarized zone, they are building new tactical roads, clearing vegetation for better lines of sight, and constructing fresh fortifications.
Which makes sense defensively.
Yeah.
If you are purging your generals, you want your borders locked down tight to prevent defections or external interference while you clean house.
Exactly.
But the real story here, the strategic shift that might be triggering all of this, isn't happening on the Korean Peninsula at all. It's their entanglement with Russia.
And this is arguably the most consequential development in the region right now.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Multiple intelligence streams confirm that North Korea is deeply prioritizing military support for Russia's war effort, but it is how they are doing it that is so remarkable.
Right. It's not just shipping old ammunition anymore.
No, we're seeing cyber-enabled North Korean IT workers running complex schemes to generate direct revenue to fund Russia. On top of that, there is persistent discussion and tracking of actual North Korean troop involvement in Ukraine.
I want to pause on Beijing's reaction to this because traditionally, China and North Korea are viewed as moving in lockstep. But you mentioned earlier this is causing friction.
It is causing a lot of friction.
Why does Beijing care if North Korea is helping Russia? Aren't they all on the same side of the anti-Western bloc?
It comes down to control and regional stability. China views North Korea as a crucial dependent buffer state. Beijing's primary goal for the peninsula is stability, meaning no regime collapse, no refugee crises, and definitely no U.S. troops moving north.
Okay. And Russia.
Russia, however, thrives on chaos right now to distract the West from Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
By forging this independent, direct military relationship with Moscow, Pyongyang is effectively bypassing Beijing's leverage.
Oh, I see.
China is reportedly very uneasy about this because it introduces wild unpredictability right on their border.
That raises a critical question for South Korea, though. If North Korea is currently pouring its resources, its cyber workers, and potentially its soldiers into Eastern Europe, does that mean Seoul gets a breather? Like, are they less of a threat locally if they are distracted globally?
It is the exact opposite.
Really?
Yes, Seoul is not relaxing at all. In fact, South Korea is fundamentally shifting its strategic posture away from a denuclearization first stance because the underlying environment has changed so drastically.
So they're adapting to a new reality.
Right. North Korea is using this alliance with Russia to entirely bypass international sanctions. The long-term threat is reciprocal technology transfer.
Explain that for us.
Think about it. If North Korea is providing artillery and troops, what are they getting in return? If they acquire advanced Russian missile guidance systems, modern submarine technology, or space capabilities, a politically provocative missile suddenly becomes a highly accurate tactical weapon.
Wow. That fundamentally changes the math for the U.S. and its allies. The threat is evolving, getting smarter and more precise.
It is.
So in the near term, we're likely looking at Pyongyang testing the waters to see how much diplomatic cover this new Russian alliance actually provides them, maybe through sudden artillery demonstrations or unexpected missile tests.
Precisely. They will probe ally resolve to see where the new red lines are drawn.
Okay, so we have been talking a lot about state-level strategy and international alliances. Now, let's look at South Asia, where the intelligence points to a radically different kind of threat.
A very different situation, yes.
We aren't looking at massive state armies posturing here. We are looking at internal collapse. The region is essentially a multi-front pressure cooker, dealing with explosive internal instabilities that threaten to spill over borders.
The center of gravity for this instability is undeniably Pakistan. The intelligence paints a picture of a state facing severe, simultaneous security crises on almost every front.
And it's coming from multiple different groups, right?
Yes. To understand the severity, you have to look at the specific actors. In the southwestern province of Balochistan, ethno-nationalist separatist groups, specifically the BLA and BRA, are conducting highly lethal attacks.
What kind of attacks are we seeing?
They recently carried out an IED attack in Panjgur and an ambush on an energy convoy in Sui.
And we should clarify why they're attacking those specific targets. This isn't random violence.
Not at all.
Balochistan is incredibly resource-rich, and these separatist groups are fundamentally fighting Islamabad over the extraction and control of local resources. Hitting energy convoys in Sui directly damages the state's wallet.
Exactly. It is an economic bleed as much as a security threat. But that is just one front.
Right.
If you move to the western border with Afghanistan, the Pakistani Taliban, the TTP, claimed a grenade attack on a military post in South Waziristan.
And there's an international element to that now, isn't there?
There is. Intelligence analysts note that these TTP-linked groups are actually utilizing Afghan Taliban training centers directly across the border to recruit, train, and indoctrinate fighters before sending them back into Pakistan.
Which completely poisons the relationship between Islamabad and Kabul.
Yeah.
I mean, we are seeing reports of heavy weapons exchanges in the Karam district, not just between militants, but directly between Pakistani state forces and Afghan border units.
It is a compounding crisis. Pakistan is dealing with severe economic distress and ethno-nationalist insurgency in the south, and a religious militant insurgency in the west, supported by a neighboring government.
It feels like a structural pressure cooker without a safety valve. Or like a juggling act on a tightrope, you know? There are so many internal insurgencies that dropping just one ball could trigger something huge. And in geopolitics, when a domestic situation becomes completely untenable, regimes often look for an external enemy to unify the country.
Which brings us directly to India.
Exactly.
That is the core of the crisis instability in South Asia right now. Independent analysts and sentiment tracking on social media, particularly on X, show a growing concern that elements within Pakistan's military establishment might view a confrontation with India as a way to relieve domestic political pressure.
It is a classic diversionary tactic.
It is. Currently, Pakistani analysts are publicly accusing India of engaging in proxy warfare by funding the very insurgencies in Balochistan we just discussed.
And India's pushing back just as hard.
Yes. India, in response, just took the floor at the United Nations to publicly condemn Pakistan over cross-border terrorism.
And while this rhetoric escalates, it's important to note that India is dealing with its own domestic unrest, though of a very different nature.
Right, there are internal protests.
Yeah, there are significant protests happening in New Delhi at Jantar Mantar, focused on education reforms and environmental issues. Furthermore, in neighboring Bangladesh, there are deeply concerning reports of anti-Hindu communal violence in Jessore.
Which has the potential to inflame regional religious tensions even further.
Absolutely.
It is a highly volatile mix of internal pressures across the entire subcontinent. But when you look at the most likely courses of action, a full-scale conventional war involving mechanized divisions crossing borders remains unlikely.
So what should we be watching for?
The highest near-term risk is an unexpected spark, a localized escalation on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, or a sudden hybrid proxy attack in a sensitive area like Kashmir.
Because an incident like that could instantly transition these internal pressures into a rapid interstate crisis.
Exactly, compressing the decision-making timeline for two nuclear-armed nations.
Well, let's move from the possibility of proxy violence in the Himalayas down into Southeast Asia. And this region presents a truly unique blend of high-stakes state disputes and entrenched transnational crime.
If we start with the state-level disputes, the South China Sea remains the most visible maritime flashpoint.
Right.
The ongoing tensions between China and the Philippines, specifically the physical confrontations around Second Thomas Shoal and Scarborough Shoal, represent the most credible direct pathway to an interstate conflict in this region.
We're consistently seeing Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels aggressively blocking and ramming Philippine resupply missions.
Yes, and the inherent danger here is that a severe miscalculation at sea could theoretically trigger the United States' mutual defense treaty with the Philippines.
That is the conflict that dominates traditional security analysis. But let's circle back to that staggering statistic we noted in the intelligence files today. The reporting reveals a hidden internal threat that is arguably rotting the region from the inside out.
The scale of it is difficult to comprehend. The intelligence outlines a deeply entrenched, transnational organized crime ecosystem centered primarily in Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos.
And how much money is this generating?
It is generating an estimated $114 billion annually.
Just to put that in perspective for you, that is roughly the gross domestic product of a mid-sized developed nation generated entirely through illicit means. How does a shadow economy get that massive?
By operating at an industrial scale. This network isn't just a few hackers in a basement. It is running massive compounds dedicated to cyber scams, cryptocurrency fraud, and illegal gambling.
And the human cost is just devastating.
It is. The most horrific part is the labor force. Victims from over 80 different nationalities have been trafficked into these compounds and forced to run these scams under the threat of violence.
It's modern-day slavery.
Yes. And the reason it can scale to $114 billion is that these criminal syndicates are deeply intertwined with local regime power structures and corrupt officials.
They have political cover.
They do. They operate in special economic zones or autonomous regions where the state either turns a blind eye or actively profits from the enterprise. In Myanmar, the ongoing civil war has effectively shattered the rule of law, creating a perfect vacuum for these syndicates to thrive and degrade the stability of the entire region.
But this brings up a massive contradiction in how we view security. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, is currently meeting in Manila.
Yeah.
We spend billions analyzing naval movements and preparing for conventional wars.
Right.
But if you have a $100 billion criminal enterprise operating forced labor hubs right in your backyard, draining your citizens' life savings through cyber fraud, why isn't ASEAN mobilizing a harder response? Like, why does it feel like this is treated as a law enforcement footnote rather than a Tier 1 national security threat?
That's a great question, and it comes down to the foundational diplomatic culture of ASEAN itself.
How so?
ASEAN operates on a strict principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of its member states. They strongly prefer consensus, diplomacy, and legal mechanisms over any kind of coercive or military intervention.
I see.
So they issue statements and hold dialogues, but taking direct action against compounds operating inside Myanmar or Cambodia would violate their core operating principles.
And to complicate matters, They are trying to solve these internal crises while being incredibly distracted by events happening thousands of miles away.
Yes. A major focus of the current Manila meetings is actually the ongoing conflict between the United States and Iran.
Right. The U.S. recently conducted its 13th consecutive night of strikes against Iranian targets.
Exactly. And you have to remember that Southeast Asian economies are heavily export-driven and deeply reliant on imported energy.
Those energy supplies and vital maritime trade routes run directly through the Middle East.
They do. If the Strait of Hormuz is threatened or disrupted by this conflict, it sends an immediate crippling economic shockwave straight into Southeast Asia.
So ASEAN leaders are sitting in Manila, watching the Middle East burn, worried about their oil supply, all while their own region is being hollowed out by massive cybercrime syndicates and maritime standoffs.
It's a remarkably difficult position to be in.
It really highlights how interconnected and how fragile the global supply chain actually is. The real test for ASEAN in the coming weeks will be whether they can move past declaratory diplomacy.
Can they actually produce a unified, credible action plan regarding the South China Sea and Myanmar, or will they remain paralyzed by their own consensus rules?
That is the central question for the region. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, analyzing intelligence from the Taiwan Strait down to the South China Sea and looking at the internal fractures in Pyongyang and Islamabad.
We have, and if there is one final thought I would offer for you to mull over looking at the totality of this intelligence, it is this.
Go ahead.
We often evaluate global threats through a very outdated 20th century lens of traditional warfare. We look for tanks massing on a border, troops mobilizing, or the clear, unmistakable lines of an invasion force.
Right. The classic signs of conflict.
But the data we've analyzed today reveals that the most consequential battles of 2026 are already happening. They are just not happening the way we expect.
They are fought in the gray zones.
Exactly. They are fought through cyber scam syndicates that drain billions from sovereign economies without firing a shot. They are fought through rapid drone developments, coercive tariffs, and the deliberate funding of proxy insurgencies.
It changes the entire paradigm.
It raises a profound question you have to ask yourself when you look at global security today. What does effective deterrence even look like, and how do you defend yourself when the attacks are specifically masterfully designed to stay exactly 1 inch below the threshold of war?
That is the reality of the modern geopolitical board. And understanding that nuance moving past the surface-level headlines to see the actual mechanisms at play is exactly why we rely on tools like Stylo News.
It's essential for seeing the whole picture.
Absolutely. As we discussed at the top of the deep dive, Stylo News is a mobile and computer application that you can download right now. It takes the power of enterprise-level intelligence gathering and puts it directly in your hands.
You can customize personal intelligence-style briefs drawn from hundreds of vetted traditional news sources.
Yeah, as well as real-time data streams from X. It filters out all the noise. If you want AI-powered, neutral, on-demand intelligence to make sense of this incredibly complex world, you can subscribe at www.stylonews.com.
Highly recommend it.
And on a personal note, thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this deep dive today. We absolutely love unpacking these complex, interlocking situations with you.
It's been a pleasure.
The world is complicated, but it is also endlessly fascinating when you take the time to really look at it. We want to hear what you are curious about, so please request topics for future deep dives. And make sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms. Until next time, keep asking the hard questions, stay curious, and stay informed.